Good morning, everyone. This is Zeba Anjum from St. Mary's School, Lagina. This is the lecture number 5 of Computer Applications with BlueJ of class 10th. So today we are going to see unit number 3, that is your values and data types. In the previous video, we have seen what are the character sets in Java. We have also seen the ASCII codes versus Unicodes, what are the differences as well as the similarities between those two. We have seen the escape sequences, and at the last a sample program that defines the working of those escape sequences. Now in this current video, we are going to see what are the tokens and what are the different types of tokens present in Java. We will be seeing what are the data types. Furthermore, we will see what is the type conversion means, how many types of conversion we are having in Java, and the last we will see some solved questions regarding the same unit. After completing this whole unit, you will be able to answer the exercise questions. Please try to do the exercise questions on your own. In case you feel any difficulty or in case you want to check your answer, I have given you a link provided in the description below as well as on the screen. So let us start with the first topic of today's video, that is your tokens. Since our class 6 we are learning biology, and in biology the most specific or most smallest definition is of cell. We know the smallest individual unit in a human body is known as cell. Now let us try to relate this definition with that of tokens in computer. See, tokens are the various Java program elements which are identified by the compiler. Or you can say a smallest individual unit that is identified by the compiler in Java programs are known as your tokens. Now secondly, we can say that a token is the smallest element of a program that is meaningful to the compiler. It should be smallest one as well as meaningful one to the compiler. Now for Java program, we are having different kinds of token present over there. We are having some kind of literals, some kind of identifiers, keywords. We are having some operators, some punctuators, separators, as well as your assignments. Now let us see each of the category one by one. We are starting with the literals. So when we talk about these literals, actually we are talking about your constant values in Java programs. It means the values that will not change its value during the program execution. Those are basically your literals. It means some kind of value we are having and we are giving this value to a variable and it is fixed for a particular period of time. Those are basically your literals. Now literals are furthermore divided into major categories depending upon what kind of data you are storing in the variable. So see, over here we are having certain category of literals. Those are your integers, real, character, string, boolean, as well as your. So let us start with the integer literal. By integer literal, we mean either you are having a positive number or a negative number or a zero. By integer, we means any number, but it should not be in the form p divided by q, or you can say it should not be a fractional number. Regarding these fractional number, we are having another category of literal, but for the integers, only some simple numbers we are having, positive, negative, as well as your zero. And these integers are also known as your fixed point numbers. There is a reason for that, and that is the decimal point is always fixed, and the position of decimal point should be always after the after the last number. That is, if you are having 12 as an integer, then for the fixed point number, the decimal point is after your 2. That means 12.0 you are having. So point 0 is unnecessary. That is why we write down only 12 over there. Now the examples of integers are 67, minus 98, and 12, etc. 67 belongs to your positive category, minus 98 belongs to negative category, and so on. Now coming towards your real literals, actually we are having some fractional numbers, and that category comes under your real literals. Fractional number we mean p divided by q form, and the denominator should not be equal to 0 or 1. Those are your real literals. It means you are having some fractional portion of the numbers, and these are also known as your floating point numbers because the decimal point is not fixed over there. That is why they are known as your floating point numbers. Basically in Java, when we will learn in future about the data types, we are also having some minor knowledge about those data types also. So we are having two kind of data types to handle those real literals. Those are your float as well as your double, where we take some decimal point numbers. So regarding this real category, we are dealing with only your floats and as well as your double category. So examples are 6.78 etc. Coming toward your character literals, every single letter or you can say digit or any special symbol if there is we are having, then it comes under your character literal. When we were learning about some ASCII values as well as Unicode characters we were learning, then over there we have seen a table in which for every other character we are having an appropriate ASCII value. So over there we have seen every letter or digit or any kind of a special character that is present on your keyboard is basically a character. That is why we are saying anything regarding your keyboard, any special symbol if you are having, but it should be only one, only a single letter should be there that contains under your character literal. And one major difference, or you can say one major important category of this character literal is that it is enclosed in your single quote. Only single quote we are having, and within those single quote it should be a letter, a digit or a special symbol should be present over there. Now see the examples we are having. You can take capital A, you can take exclamation mark, you can take 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Any single letter, digit or special symbol you can take within this category. Now coming towards your string literal, basically it is a single or any group of characters. If you are having group of characters or a single character also, then it comes under your string literal. But we are saying single character should also be present in string literal, and we are saying the same in character literal, but there is a difference between those two. In string literal, actually the thing, every group of character is enclosed in your double quotes, but in character it is enclosed in single quote. So for example, let's see, hello is there, everything is contained in your double quotes. Yes, now coming towards your boolean value, boolean means only two values, either true value or a false value. It is written without any code, only you have to write down true and false, and true and false should be in your lowercase character. So examples are only two, either true or false, because boolean contains only these two values, no three values are there in boolean. Now coming towards the last category of your literal, that is your null, it means no value. It means the thing or the variable is actually an empty one. And it is also written without code. It is used to initialize an object or an array. Remember, when we are declaring a class, over there we have discussed about your instance variables, or you can say data members we were saying over there. So basically, when we are going to create an object or any kind of array, then we need this kind of literal. We will see in the future how this literal. Now see the example we are having, string A equals to null. It means A is a variable name, string is the data type, and we are not having any value in A. That is why we are declaring this string as a null literal. Now see, moving towards your token, the second category we are going to see over there, that is your identifiers. Basically identifiers are your variables in Java program. It is used to identify the name of any variable or any function or a class or any other thing that gives a special meaning to that. In case, let us say over there we were making a class. Yes, when we were learning about escape sequences, we have made a class and we have given the name escape over there. So after this class keyword, we have written escape. So basically, we can say that this is an escape class. So this word, actually this is an identifier that is giving a unique identity to hold the class. So that is why we can say either it a variable or an identifier. Sometimes these two words can be used alternatively also. So Java identifiers are the user-defined names of variables. You can say methods or functions, classes, arrays, packages, and interfaces. These are user-defined names. Yes, because only the user is being defining these things. Variables are also called identifiers. We have already discussed. So over here are some of the rules for naming an identifier. Those are: identifier must begin with a letter or an underscore. It should begin either with a letter or an underscore should be present at the very first position. No digits should be there, no special character should be there, only a letter and an underscore should be there. Apart from the first character, an identifier can have any combination of character. The first character is fixed, that is, it should be either a letter or an underscore. But after this letter or an underscore, you can have any combination of character for naming an identifier. Third one, identifier in Java are case sensitive. Yes, because Java is a case sensitive language, that is why uppercase and lowercase characters are being treated differently. Fourth one, Java identifiers can be of any length. There is no boundation of length over there. Identifier name cannot contain white spaces. By white spaces, we mean blank. Blank should not be there in an identifier's name. Next one, any identifier name must not begin with a digit but can contain digit within it. It means, again, it is pointing towards your first point, that is the first letter, that is the first space or a first character should be a letter or an underscore. And if you are giving a digit in the first position, that then it means that your identifier is not a valid one. You cannot insert a digit in the very beginning position, but in the middle portion you can give any number of digits over there. The last one we are having, most importantly, keywords cannot be used as identifiers in Java. Now keywords, we are going to see the next one, what are keywords, and those keywords are basically some special kind of words that are having some special meaning to the compiler, and uh, these keywords cannot be used as an identifiers in Java. Now see examples, let us take first one, my variable, second one x, third one end variable, fourth one this one. Now, among these five examples, let us identify which is an valid integer, or you can say. Now, among these five examples, we have to identify what are the valid identifiers and what are invalid identifiers. Now, the first one, my variable. See, the first one, it means it is beginning with a letter. It is not containing any white spaces. All the rules are being followed. That is why it is a valid one. Second one, X. It is also a valid one. It is following all the rules for naming an identifier. Third one, we are having invalid because the first position is being fixed, and the first position we are having some special character and it is not valid over there. Fourth one, 23, we are having digit, we are having at the very first position, but it is not allowed for naming an identifier, that is why it is an invalid one. Last one, I, it is obviously a valid one. Now moving towards a sample program, let us see we are having a program over here. Now we have learned about the literals, we have also learned about your identifiers. Now over here we have to identify what are the literals and what are the identifiers. See, in this line, int var1 equals to 112. 112 is an integer, int is a data type, and var1 is actually your variable. So over here 112 is an integer literal, var1 is an identifier, and in the second line 31.10 is a float literal, it means it is a constant value, and where 2 is actually your identifier, and so on in these three lines also. But for an identifier, let me say overall this class, see in the first line, public class learning literal. See, learning literal is your class name and it is also a user defined variable. Yes, but instead of saying this thing a variable, we say this is an identifier. This learning literal is actually an identifier over there. So now you can see the difference between the literals as well as your identifiers within this sample program. Now moving towards your third category of tokens, that are your keywords. We have discussed that there are some special words whose meanings are already defined to the compiler, and those are your keywords. See, keywords in Java are predefined or reserved words that are having some special meaning to the Java compiler. Now we are having some Java keywords over here. Let us have a look on them. Abstract, case, do, finally, import, name, and so on. Over here we have given 50 examples of your Java keywords. We are having more than 50, but for an instance of time, let us see only these. So all these variables, all these keywords are having some special meaning, and we cannot use it instead. We cannot use these keywords for naming an identifier over there. See, one thing you have to notice over here is that every keyword is in lowercase character. No keyword is there with uppercase character. So you can say that keywords are the words that are always written in your lowercase character. Now let us take an example of this for. It is a very popular one, for loop we are having. See over here it is written FOR and everything is in lowercase, and if I write down FOR again for naming an identifier, and if I make this F a capital one, then it becomes a valid identifier. Why? Because again the same reason is there. Java is a case sensitive language, and for smaller case or for lower FOR it is your keyword, and you can use capital FOR for naming an identifier and so on. Now moving towards your operators. Operators are basically used for solving some expressions, or you can say some arithmetic or mathematical expressions. When we are solving, then we are making the use of these operators over there. An operator in Java is a special symbol that signifies the compiler to perform some specific task. It supports 8 types of operators. See, 8 types of operators we are having. Arithmetic, where we are dealing with plus, minus, multiply, divide, modulus and so on. Unary, we are having assignment, relational, logical, ternary, bitwise, shift. See, the first 6 types of operators we are having in our syllabus, but the last two, that is bitwise and your shift, we are not having in the syllabus. So the next chapter when we will study about the operators, then we are going to see these all 6 types of operators in details. For now, just understand the concept that it is a special symbol that signifies the compiler to perform some specific task. Now moving towards your punctuators and separators. Basically punctuators and separators are a common thing. If you say about these, both are the special characters, which are giving certain meaning to your compiler. Punctuators means everything that contains your punctuation mark. Likewise your semicolon we are having. Every line in Java program you are terminating with semicolon, so again it is having some predefined meaning to the compiler. Comma you are having for differentiating between two data types, or you can say two variables. If you are differentiating then between those we have to apply the comma. And separators, all the brackets comes under your separator category. So see, these special symbols are used in Java having some special meaning and thus cannot be used for some other purpose. Secondly, we can say these symbols and special characters make different parts of code separate from each other. Means one code is being separated from other code by using these punctuators, or you can say a separators. Some examples also we are having. See, brackets, parentheses, braces, comma, semicolon, etc. you can have, and both the things, both the punctuators and separators contains under the same category, so better to understand both the things within a single throw. Now the last one, assignment operator. Basically it is a kind of operator. It means we are assigning some value to a variable. That is mean by your assignment operator. So see, assignment refers to storing a value in a variable of appropriate data type. It means if you are having an integer variable, let us say you are having integer variable and the name of your variable is a, so our declaration becomes int a. Now if we are assigning some kind of value over there for storing purpose, let us say if we are saying int a equals to 10, then it means we are assigning the value 10 to a variable that is your a. Now the examples, let us see. Int a equals to 100. It is an integer data type value and we are storing 100 over there. So this is an assignment operator. Second one, for storing decimal we are having float. Again for storing string, for storing your sequence of characters we are having our string. So string data type we have to use over here. Now coming towards your data type. Basically data types refers to the type of data that we are going to store over there. Previously we have seen we are having some kind of integer, literal, we are having some kind of float, decimal point, character, strings. Now basically what are the categories in the basically in what category, or how can we divide those uh, type of data that we are going to store over here. All these things we are going to learn in your data type category. Now see, data types are being divided into two parts. Primitive data types we are having and non-primitive data type, or you can say fundamental data type we are having and non-fundamental or derived or composite data type we are having. In primitive data type we will learn about the very basic data type. It means they cannot be broken down into certain smaller categories, but non-primitive data type basically contains all the primitive data types clustered together. Now let me explain this sequentially. See, the primitive data types are also known as the fundamental data types. It is again classified into two categories. Categories we are going to see furthermore, but for the sake of understanding, let us understand these fundamental data types are actually the data types which are the very simplest one. It means, let us say your integer variable you are having. Then for integer variable, you cannot break down this integer into certain smaller category. Now that is what your fundamental data types means. See, primitive data types divided into two categories, numeric and non-numeric. By numeric means all the arithmetic operations we are going to perform on it. Non-numeric means except numeric data, whatever it comes, then all these comes under your non-numeric data. See, for numeric one, first category is of integer data type. Now again this integer data type is being converted into four parts. First one we are having byte, second short, third int, then long. Now these categories basically depends upon the size. For byte you are having 1 byte. For storing this byte you are having actually 1 byte storage. For storing your short variable you are having 2 byte. For storing integer variable you are having 4 byte. For long you will be having 8 bytes and so on. So that is why integer types are being divided into 4 depending upon the size. Now second one is your real type. Previously also we have seen the real types. Basically in real literals we have seen two types of real types we are having, that is your float as well as your double. Again the difference is of precision, or you can say it is of size. Float actually covers your 4 byte of data and double covers your 8 byte of data. That is the difference between those two. And float and double both of them stores your real type data. It means fractional portion or decimal portion they are going to store. Now for non-numeric data we are having first one, character type. Either it be of character or it be of sequence of character. Both the things comes under your character type. Secondly we are having boolean type. Boolean again we mean either it is true or it will be of false. Now coming towards your non-primitive data types, these are also known as your derived or composite data types. It contains arrays, classes, etc. Now remember when we were having our second video on classes and objects we were having, then now remember when we are having our second video based on the classes and objects, over there we have seen how to define a class, and in those class we have seen how to define some data members, or you can say instance variables we are going to define over there na? So somehow we have taken an integer variable or a float variable or a character variable within those. Yes, and combinedly all these primitive data types we have taken, and if we combine all those data into single unit, then it comprises of your class, and that is why it is known as. Similarly, if you are going to talk about these arrays that you are going to learn in the, then you will be seeing a similar type of data. If we are storing, then it means it becomes your array. So basically all these two arrays and classes comes under your non-primitive data types. Moving forward to declaration as well as initialization, we are again talking about your data types, and we are going to see over here that how a variable is being declared and what does this initialization means. Over there we are going to see. So see, declaration is when you declare a variable with a name. It means only you are giving a name and a data type. It means you are declaring a variable. But if you are giving certain value to this variable, then it comes under your initialization process. So see, declaration is when you declare a variable with a name, while initialization is when we put a value in a variable. Now see some examples we are having. First one, int a. Here variable name is a but the data type is int. We have not given any value over there, so it comes under your variable description example. Second one, boolean p. Variable name p we are having, data type boolean we are having, but we are not again giving any value to it. Again it comes under your variable description. Now let us see some more examples. A equals to 10. Over here we are giving only the value to your variable, so it comes under variable initialization. Again p equals to false, the reason is the same, it comes under your value initialization. Now regarding this declaration, or you can say initialization, we can combine both the process in a single line. A equals to 10, in which we have combined both the declaration as well as initialization in a single throw. Again we are having boolean p equals to false. We are declaring the variable and at the same time we are giving a single variable to it. Over here I have written description. Instead of this description, please assume we have written declaration over here and over here also. Now let us talk about some default initialization thing. See, default initialization is basically regarding your data members only. Only data members if we are talking, then this default initialization comes into play. Now see the difference between the variables. One variable we are declaring outside the main function. That means inside your class, your data members or your instance variables, you can say. Those are one kind of variable, and another kind of variable you are having that you are declaring in your public static void main portion or in any other function. Then if you are declaring any variable in a function, then it is basically your local function. And if you are declaring a variable outside your function, it means your instance variables we are declaring. Then for those instance variables only your default initializations takes into role. See, a table we are having for integer, your default value is a equals to 0, for float 0.0f and so on. Now actually what we want to say is, see this example again, int a. If we are declaring int a within any function, then it means at this point of time this a will be holding any garbage value. If we are not declaring a equal to 10, and again if we are using this a, then it will be picking only the garbage value if we are using this variable in any function. But if we are using this int a in your class, inside a class as an instance variable, then it means your a will be holding value 0. Whenever you are using this a, then it is holding your value 0 if it is an instance variable. And if this int a you are using in any function, it means it is a local variable and it is holding your garbage value. So that is the difference between those two. So please remember, this default initialization comes into play when we are using or when we are talking about only instance variable, not regarding your local variables. Now coming towards your static as well as dynamic initialization. Static means one time only we have to initialize a thing and it is constant throughout the program. By dynamic we means at the runtime the value is being initialized and it can change as per the situation, as per the time. Now see some differences, basic differences we are having. Static memory allocation is a method of allocating memory, and once the memory is allocated it is fixed. Yes, once the memory is allocated, it means once you have declared int a, then it means your a is a variable and it is holding integer value. So your 4 bytes are fixed over there. In dynamic memory allocation is a method of allocating memory, and once the memory is allocated, it can be changed. Likewise, you are declaring an object. If you are declaring an object, then it depends upon the class that how much data it is going to hold it out. Second one, modification. In static memory allocation, it is not possible to resize after initial allocation. Matlab, if you have initially allocated any kind of variable using this static initialization method, then it is not possible to resize it. But in dynamic memory allocation, it is always possible to maximize or minimize this thing. Third one, implementation. Static memory allocation is easy to implement regarding your dynamic memory allocation, because static memory allocation take place while you are writing a program, but dynamic memory allocation only take place when you are executing your program or when you are running your program. Speed. In static memory allocation, execution is faster than dynamic memory allocation. Yes, because when we are writing the program over there only we have to apply our um, efforts. In dynamic memory allocation, execution is slower than static memory allocation. Yes, because only when we are executing our program, then only every other task it has to do while executing the program. In static memory, you are giving int a over there. Yes, int a equals to 10 you are giving, so it means an integer variable we are having and it is holding the value 10. But in dynamic memory, if you are giving any formula, then during this execution the compiler has to put the value in the formula, it has to execute the formula, it has to get the answer, and finally it has to assign the values to your data to your variable name. That is how it is working. So in dynamic memory, basically your allocation, or you can say execution, is slower than your static memory allocation. Now let us understand this with the help of an example. See, in static we are having int a equals to 100. So when you are writing a program, you are done with the same. But when you are writing any dynamic value, double d equals to math dot square root a, you have written only the formula. Now the compiler has to do the work over here, so that is why its execution speed will be much lower, and it will take much more time. Now moving forward with our type conversion. Firstly, let us understand our arithmetic expressions. When we are solving any formula, then it comes under your arithmetic expression. Let us take an example. Int a equals to b plus c. A very simple example of an expression. Yes, and we are handling this plus operation over there. So, arithmetic expression basically are divided into two. That is your pure arithmetic expression and your impure arithmetic expression. So, afterwards, we are going to relate these expressions with our type conversion, and we will see what is the need of converting these data types. Let us see an example. An expression we are having d equals to a plus b plus c divided by 4. Let us assume we are having a as an integer data type, b also as an integer data type, and c also as an integer data type. Again, let us take an expression d equals to a plus b plus c divided by 4, the same expression, but over here we are having a as an integer data type, c as a double data type, and b as a character data type. So over here, when we see in the first expression, everything is an integer, so ultimately the answer will be in integer. Now in the second expression, if we talk about, we are having integer, double, as well as character. So on what basis this data type of d will be defined, that is unknown to us, and that is how our type conversion take place. Now regarding this pure arithmetic expression as well as your impure arithmetic expression, the first example refers to pure arithmetic expression where we are having only a single type of data types present in an expression. In impure expression, we are having mixed values, mixed data type we are having. So that is the difference between those two. Now see, type conversion are basically divided into two: implicit type conversion and explicit type conversion. In implicit type conversion, let us see, basically your compiler is doing that part. Implicit type conversion, there is no role of user over there. So conversion take place without the intervention of the user, depending upon the hierarchy of data type. It means the hierarchy we have to see over there for assuming the data type of D in the second expression, and only the compiler is doing this thing. The user is not taking part in this thing. Secondly, it is also known as your quotient. Now see this figure over here. We are having a hierarchy: byte, char, short, int, long, float, double. So we can see the highest hierarchy is of double and the lowest is of your byte. So if we come again to this expression, the second expression, if we again see, then regarding this integer, character, or your double is having the highest hierarchy. So then if we are having this kind of expression, then your D will be of always your double data type, because it is having your highest hierarchy in this expression. Now coming towards your explicit type conversion, it means user is making the choice over there. So conversion take place with the intervention of the user, depending upon the user's choice only. It is also known as typecasting. You can say explicit type conversion or your typecasting. Now again, let us see an example regarding this. See, if we are having int a, float b, char c, three different data types we are having, and three different variables again we are having. And if we are saying d equals to char a plus b multiplied by c, for this expression, this portion of expression actually should be solved regarding this integer, float, and character. Within this hierarchy, you can say float is having the highest hierarchy among integer, float, and character. So for this portion only this thing is valid, but we have written character over here. So any kind of data type if you are having, it is being converted into character, and your D is of character data type over here also. So we are writing char over here, so it means it is your user's choice. If we neglect this char, then it becomes your implicit data type conversion. Now sample question, let us see. First question that you are going to see over there is predict the return data type of R and N from the snippet. You are giving some lines of code, and in those lines you have to identify what kind of data type does this R and N hold. See the third line, R equals to P plus M. P is of integer data type, M is of float data type. Previously we have seen regarding this int and float, we are having float at the highest priority. So R is of float data type. In the next line we are having n equals to m divided by 3 multiply math.pow 43. M again of float data type, and we have seen math.pow is actually a power function of mathematical library, and it is always returning the data type double. So in float and double, your double is at highest hierarchy, so again this n will be of your double data type. So this is the answer, R is of float data type and n is of double data type. Second type of question you will be seeing, you have to predict the output. See first line, int p equals to int a plus 25. If you see only this portion, then we can say that we are doing explicit type conversion over here. Yes, we have written int in the bracket and a. So if such kind of thing happens, then it means you have to find out the ASCII value of a. And wherever we have discussed about the ASCII values as well as your Unicode character, you can see over there that we are having 65 as an ASCII value of a. So for this portion only, for this integer a only, the value is being converted into integer data type, and it means your ASCII value will be kept over here. So 65 plus 25, 90 we are having, and p will be holding your 90 value. In the second line, see int m equals to math dot square root 16. We know that mathematical library function math dot square root will be giving out you double value, but over here we are having int m, and we are not using any type of explicit type conversion, we are not using here. So 4.0 will be returned by this method of square root, but int m we are having, so 0.0 will be neglected, or you can say it will be truncated, and only 4 will be stored in your m. So this is the answer, p 65 plus 25. 65 means the ASCII value of a, and it is storing 90, m 4. Again the same reason, 0.0 is being truncated. Now the next question that you can see is subject computer equals to new subject. You have to explain this line. Remember when we were declaring an object of the classes, over there we have seen a syntax, and please try to compare that syntax with this one. Subject computer equals to new subject and parenthesis. So we can say that subject is a class name, computer is an object that we are creating, new is a keyword, and subject again is a class name. So with this line we are actually trying to create an object with the name of computer of class subject. Again the question, pick the valid identifier, break. If you remember, we are having break as a keyword, so it is not a valid identifier. Next one, again the break, but our case is different. B is capitalized over here, so yes, we can use it as a valid identifier. It is a valid one. Third one, identity underscore unknown. For regarding the length, we are not having any boundation. We are not having any kind of white space over there. Letters we are having, yes, so it is a valid one. Next one, identity unknown but a space between them. Remember when we were learning about the rules, we said there should not be a blank space over there, so that is why it is an invalid one. Next one, addition, yes, we can use it as a valid identifier. For, it is a keyword, so we cannot use it. The last one, again for, but the case is different, so yes, we can use this last for naming our identifier. Now these are the answers, please check your own. Now for the next video, we are going to see our unit number 4, that is operators in Java. In that we will learn what are the expressions, We will again learn what are Java expressions versus mathematical expressions, how they are related and how they are differentiated. Nextly, we will be learning about the operators, some types of operators we will learn, and some solved examples we will see. Again, regarding the exercise portion of this unit number 3, you can refer to the link that is given in the description below, or you can see the link, it is given at the very bottom portion on the screen. Over here I have created a blog, and please refer to unit number 3 values and data types over there. In case you feel any difficulty, please let